Oh, I wonder if we can turn the house lights up just so I can see everybody. And if you do want to follow along today in the Bible, we are going to the book of Genesis, chapter 25 through to 33. So please let me see everybody. If you have your Bibles, by all means, do open them. Clint and Arlo, thank you so much for leading us in prayer today as you did. Today's message is all about the story of how God restored blessing into some people's lives. And it's a story with twists and turns. It's got lots of tears and lots of surprises. And ultimately, it's a story of God restoring blessing into their lives. But it's got special significance for a number of reasons to many of us, because it's a story that speaks into those of our lives where the relationship with your dad was strained, where some of you missed your father's blessing. You never knew that. Verse 19 of chapter 25, this is the account of the family line of Abraham's son Isaac. Now the story goes that Abraham's son Isaac was 40 years old when he married Rebekah, and they must have tried for many years to have children unsuccessfully, because at about the late 50s stage, they're still not having children. Rebekah's barren, and some of you know the pain that they would have been going through. Isaac prays for his wife, and she conceives. And this conception is an interesting one, because inside her there are two babies at war, it seems, inside her. Now, she wouldn't have known that there were two inside her, except that there was this whole hullabaloo going on inside of her. And she inquires, Lord, why is this? What's going on here? My tummy is just at war with itself. And those of you who work in radiology would know a little bit more about this than I do, but the world's first sonogram takes place, and God reveals to them, actually there's two nations in your womb. Two nations, two peoples will come from you, and they will be separated, and one will be stronger than the other, and the older is going to serve the younger. Well, you would think that the significance of what's happening inside her would have something to do with how they named these children, but apparently not, because when the babies come along, the first one comes, and he comes from the womb red and hairy. And so they name him Red and Hairy. His name is Esau. Means red and hairy, and I feel some affinity with Esau. My name is Russell, which sounds a little bit like Esau. Russell means red and hairy. And I wonder if I'm some strange descendant of Esau and the Edomites, but beyond that, the second boy comes along, and there in the birthing process, this little hand of the younger is holding the heel of the older. And you would think that they would come up with a better name than heel grabber, but no. The older one, red and hairy. The younger one, heel grabber. And so red and hairy and heel grabber, these two boys begin to grow up. They look nothing like each other. Esau is like a warrior type. He's a hunter. And as he is exploring, late childhood, early teens, he's got bows and arrows. He's out there with his dad. They're hunting. They're bringing home the game from the fields. And Isaac has this particular affinity with his oldest boy, Esau. Esau knows the father's love. He knows what it's like to be your dad's favorite. And it was pretty obvious that Isaac and Esau had a very strong bond. Heel grabber, on the other hand, well, he tended to spend time in the tent, helping mum around the tents and keeping things clean and mending things. And he was a smooth-skinned boy, and as he grew up, he seemed to have no interest in hunting, but rather hung around the tents. Very different to his brother, and as a result, it says in the scriptures here that, verse 28 of chapter 25, Isaac, the father, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau But Rebekah loved Jacob, heel grabber. So you have this really terrible situation developing from a young age where one parent favors the older one and the other parent favors the younger, and it's tragic. It's a grave mistake when as parents we show favoritism to our kids. Well, you probably know the story of the stew where Esau's famished one day. He comes back from hunting. Jacob's been making some lentil stew and some bread, and Esau wants some, and Jacob's quite sly and tricks him into selling his birthright to him. Well, Esau is later quite upset about this when he thinks about it. He begins to despise his brother for what he did there. Time goes by and they grow up. I'm sure there were many times when Jacob's self-worth was quite low, longing for his father's attention or blessing or interest, or I wonder if Dad would somehow spend time with me. Maybe Jacob confided in his mum. I can imagine Rebekah, his mum, saying to Jacob, "Jacob, don't worry. I know your dad loves your older brother, but there was a prophecy before you were born, and the prophecy was this, that the older will serve the younger. Jacob, you're the younger one. And the prophecy said that your people, there was a whole nation would come from you, and you would be the stronger nation. Take comfort in that, my son." Well, they're about 40 years old or thereabouts when Isaac is getting to the end of his life. His eyes have completely lost their sight. His touch is kind of going. His life is on its last legs, and Isaac recognizes this, and he calls his oldest son Esau, and he says, "Esau, I want you to go out into the fields, and I want you to shoot some game, take your bow and arrows, and get some game and prepare it just as I like it, because I want to bless you." Well, Rebekah hears this conversation between her husband and her oldest boy. And perhaps she thinks to herself, I'm going to help God fulfill the promise he made. And she gets Jacob and she ushers him in and she says, "Jacob, we don't have much time. Go out to our flocks. Choose 2 choice kids. Bring them to me. I'm going to prepare them just the way your father likes it. And you're going to go into your father and you're going to receive your father's blessing." And Jacob says, but Mum, I'm a smooth man. Look at me. How is Dad ever going to see that I'm not Esau? He's going to see straight through it and I'm going to get a curse, not a blessing. And she says, "Do what I say. Go and do it. We will work a way out. We'll clothe you in Esau's clothes. We'll cover you with hair and your father's not going to know the difference. This is how you're going to receive the blessing." And it's kind of a tragic situation because Jacob is convinced in this sad conversation that the only way he can receive his father's blessing is to deceive his father by dressing as his brother. Jacob goes out, gets the 2 kids, brings them back. Mum prepares the food just as Dad likes it. She dresses him in Esau's clothes, which were in the house, in the tent. She takes the kid goat's skins that he'd just killed, and somehow she drapes them over his hands and his neck. Isaac must have been pretty old. Would you agree? Didn't know the difference. Either that or Esau was pretty hairy. And probably it's a bit of both, but it's kind of a sad situation where Jacob now goes before his father and the conversation goes something like, this, "Isaac, who is it?" Verse 19, "I'm Esau." And probably he put on his deepest voice, "I'm Esau, your oldest son. Well, I've come so that you can bless me." And Isaac says, "How did you do this so quickly? You were going out to hunt. You're back already and the food is prepared." "Well, the Lord your God gave me success," he replies. And Isaac's kind of wondering about this. He says, come here so I can feel your skin. I want to know if you're really Esau or not. You can imagine in Jacob's heart, his heart is pounding. He comes closer. His dad begins to run his elderly hands over his neck and down his clothes, and he can smell the smell of Esau in these clothes. And Jacob says, the voice is my son Jacob, but the hands are my son Esau. And he didn't recognize him. He was confused, but he didn't recognize that it was Jacob. And sufficiently convinced, he eats the food that Jacob's prepared. Come here, my son. And Jacob comes close, and Isaac kisses him, smells the smell of Esau. Ah, the smell of my son. It's like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's riches, and abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and people bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be blessed. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. Jacob, having been blessed, knows that his older brother is going to be entering sometime soon. He scurries away and makes himself scarce. Within time, Esau enters, has prepared the stew. Now he comes looking for his father. He goes into his father. Father, please sit up. I've come for you to bless me. Isaac is confused. Who are you? I'm your son, Esau. Isaac, the father, now begins to tremble violently because he realizes what's taken place. Who was it that brought me game just before? I blessed him. Who was that? Esau hears his father's words and he bursts out with this loud and bitter cry, bless me, my father, bless me too. Surely you have some blessing left. You didn't give it all away. He's taken my birthright. Now he's taken my blessing. Please, Father, do you have some blessing for me? His father doesn't. He says, I've blessed your youngest son with your blessing. Your dwelling, Esau, will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and you will serve your brother. And when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke off from your neck. We can imagine how, as a brother, you would have felt if your younger brother, the heel grabber, heel for short, the one who cannot be trusted, named that way at birth, now he proves himself that way a second time. Not only has he stolen Esau's birthright, but now he steals his father's blessing. And Esau not only holds a grudge, but he determines that as soon as his father is dead, Jacob, the heel, will also be dead by his hand. Rebekah begins to hear rumors and whispers that Esau is out to kill Jacob as soon as Isaac is gone. She calls her son Isaac. She says, Isaac, we don't have much time. You're going to have to flee this place. Go to my brother Laban. He has family, fit in there. Just be with our people in another place for now. She tells Isaac, she says, I'm sick of living amongst the Hittites and I don't want our son Jacob to marry Hittites like Esau has. Esau had 2 Hittite wives. Well, let's send Jacob away to my brother and to his people, and he can marry there, one of our people. Isaac agrees to it, and although he's been deceived by his youngest son, he offers another blessing on him. Esau hears about this, that Jacob has been sent to his own people to find wives for himself. In those days, it wasn't like a monogamous thing. It was different then. Esau is so bitter toward his parents. You know what he goes and does? He knows that his parents don't want Canaanite wives. They don't want Hittite wives. Esau has Hittite wives, and now he goes and marries 2 more Canaanites just to spite his parents. It's a mess. Families in turmoil. Jacob runs. He flees. He's got nothing in his hands but a staff. And as he flees across the desert, across towards his people, it's a few days' journey. Exhausted, he lays down to sleep on a pile of rocks. Jacob is no Bear Grylls. He's no Esau. Jacob's not a hunter. And it's obvious because he takes a rock for a pillow. Think about it. He's deceived his own father. He's farewelled the only person who loves him, his mother. He'll never see her again, as it turns out. His own brother hates him and is determined to kill him when he gets the chance. And now he's all alone. He's brought shame on himself, shame on his father, shame on his brother. And now he has no one in the middle of nowhere. And he falls to sleep exhausted. And during this night, he has a dream. And this dream is of a ladder reaching into heaven. And I want you to read this with me. It's in chapter 28 and verse 12. He had a dream in which he saw a ladder or a stairway resting on the earth with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. Interesting. Which word comes first? Ascending or descending? Yeah, the angels of God are ascending this ladder. What does that tell you about where the angels of God are starting their journey on this ladder? They're right here with him. And they're descending the ladder, and this dream changes Jacob's perception, his perspective. He wakes up, nothing has changed about his circumstances. But he's so filled with awe because God is here in this place. God is with me in my shame. God is with me in my aloneness. God is with me in the turmoils that my family's going through. God is here. And he's so full of awe, he renames this place. He renames it the house of God. And this pile of rocks named Bethel or house of God becomes a cornerstone in his life, and there will be more. During this dream, the Lord speaks to him and reminds him of the same lineage of promise which began in Genesis 3, was given to his grandfather Abraham, was given to his father. It has to do with him as well. And listen to the key part of this promise. He says, all peoples on earth will be blessed through you and through your offspring. That's a reference to the Messiah who will come one day. Jacob may not know it at this point, but God then says, I am with you. I will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. So Jacob has this dream with a ladder. The Lord speaks to him while he lays in a pile of rocks in the promised land, which he will return to one day with his people. And Jacob wakes from his dream. Surely God was in this place. I wasn't aware. How awesome is this place? This is the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Thank you, Carol and team, for putting this ladder together for us. It's perfect. Well, in the morning he wakes. It's not long after this he arrives at his destination, Uncle Laban's place. Uncle Laban's not a nice man, unfortunately. And through Jacob's experience with his uncle Laban, Laban tries to rip him off many times, but perhaps the most severe of these is going to happen very soon, in 7 years' time. As Jacob arrives in this land, he meets a girl, Rachel, at a well. It's love at first sight. I mean, it's all the things you can imagine you might want if you were looking for a future husband or wife. These two fall in love instantly, and it's not long before Jacob, who has nothing and who has no right to ask for her hand in marriage, approaches Laban and says, Laban, I would like to marry Rachel. Laban's a calculating man, probably had a calculator of some sort of his own, and pulls it out and calculates, I want 7 years hard labor from you, and at the end of 7 years, you can have Rachel as your wife. Jacob agrees, and the scriptures tell us Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel as his wife. But they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Isn't that sweet? It's powerful. It's powerful. Rachel had a sister, by the way, Leah. And Leah is described in these mysterious terms. She had weak eyes We don't know what weak eyes means, but Rachel is described in contrast as having lovely face and lovely form. Now, men, I'm sure you can imagine what I would ask Christy to stand and display lovely face and lovely form, but we're not going to do that today. But it's love at first sight with Rachel. Okay, 7 years pass like that. Now, a wedding is about to come because Jacob, heel grabber, goes to his uncle Laban and says, Laban, 7 years is up. I've been counting the days. It's time. I want my wife. And so the wedding is arranged. Now, a wedding in those days, typically 7 days of feasting and family and friends. And in the middle of the week, there would be a night where the feasting would reach its peak and all of the guests would be celebrating. The bride would be brought to the groom's tent. The groom would arrive and they'd consummate the marriage, and the wedding feasting would continue for several days. You can imagine Rachel's anticipation. She has dreamed of this moment all her life. The last 7 years, she's had a face to put to that dream. She's been anticipating her wedding night, where her new chapter will begin with the love of her life, Jacob. Leah and Rachel, probably since they were kids, have practiced this game, the wedding game. They've no doubt dressed each other since they were babies, little ones, playing the wedding game. And think about Leah for a moment over those last 7 years. Laban, the kind of character he was interested in the dowry. And he wanted 2 dowries, not 1. The pressure on Leah from her dad, Laban, would have been something like this. Leah, Rachel has found a husband. It's going to be 7 years. That gives us 7 years to find you a husband. So get onto it. Laban would have been approaching his friends, I'm sure, searching for a husband for Leah. Sadly, in those days, women were valued for their appearance, for their beauty, for their childbearing abilities. I'm so glad we've moved on from there. But Laban saw in his daughters money to be made as well. The pressure on poor Leah would have increased as the 7 years came to a close. Leah, you need to get on with it. Time's running out. Well, on the night of the wedding, the feasting has reached its peak. Rachel and Leah are preparing for Rachel to come to the groom's tent. Probably Leah, filled with sadness and mixed emotion, shame of her father's words, saying, Leah, you will bring shame on this family if your younger sister marries before you do. As she's dressing Rachel, I imagine it goes something like this. Laban enters the room. Girls, we need to talk. What is it, Father? Leah, I've spoken to you many times about the shame that this will bring on our family. It's unacceptable for your younger sister to be married before you are. Rachel says, Father, what do you want us to do? It's pretty clear what we have to do. Rachel, tonight, let your sister wear the wedding gown. Your sister must be married before you are. I can't imagine the sorrow, the anguish, the conversation that took place, but the sad conclusion is that Leah will wear the wedding gown. Leah has been convinced that the only way she can have the love of a man is to deceive her husband by dressing as her sister. She's taken to the tent. At some point during the night, the groom, Jacob, is brought to the tent. They consummate the marriage. Leah, I imagine, crying herself to sleep, knowing that the morning's light will reveal all, and she will be